For all the Jural Assemblies Part 7a, Discipline by Anna von Reitz. If you have been doing your homework and following along, you now know how much is riding on the success of the State Jural Assemblies and the willingness and ability of the American people to learn their true and proper role and do the work associated with it. You are now aware of the gross profit motives of those who have betrayed your national trust and used and abused the American states and people ever since the Civil War. You know that the British monarchs and the popes have acted in gross breach of trust to allow this abuse. You know that members of Congress, both Republican and Democrat alike, have deliberately and deceitfully abused your trust too, and have operated in a criminal conspiracy designed to usurp your power and impoverish you for their own benefit and the benefit of foreign interests. You know that all these parties to fraud and many other crimes have grown rich and powerful at your expense, even the expense of your lives. And you have reason to know that this has been orchestrated in the same way that any crime syndicate is operated via patsies, those who unknowingly contribute their services to evil, and via made men who know the score and keep the scam running. Most of us have served as patsies in this scheme at some time or another, simply out of ignorance. In your fledgling State Jural Assemblies you will find good solid people who have their heads screwed on tight, who follow the logic and the history, and who study hard to get things right. You will also find 4 other kinds of people: 1. The sincerely confused, 2. Disruptors, and 3. Disinformation agents, and 4. Spies. Be patient with those who are truly confused and do your best to explain things, even multiple times. Those who have been indoctrinated in the public schools run by these monsters have learned and believed lies all their lives, and it is difficult for them to unlearn all this, all at once. Then, too, much of the fraud involved hinges on words and the use and misuse of words. Not everyone is an English major, okay? So, it will take time for everyone to completely understand the verbiage and how it was pulled on us. The disruptors are all the nasty, pushy, I am important, my issues count and yours don't, and the I have a problem with that, whatever it is, on a constant basis, folks. You all know who I am talking about. They always want to argue and split hairs and find fault and gripe and blame and do very little to nothing themselves that is constructive, helpful, or correct. They are like little cyclones causing chaos and impeding progress wherever they go, usually babbling about arcane, obscure points of law or grammar or similar ontological, semantic, or religious concerns. They are attention seekers who just won't take no for an answer or allow anyone else a fair shot at addressing other concerns. Sometimes these characters, especially the paid provocateurs, get together in pairs or small groups, and work together to keep everyone stymied. Take them aside and explain that people who disrupt the functioning of the assembly or impede the conduct of business in State Jural Assembly meetings can and will be removed by the marshal at arms. Some people are just naturally like this and go from one thing to another seeking attention with no very clear purpose at all, but a substantial percentage of the disruptors are paid provocateurs engaged for the purpose of causing this kind of interruption and obstruction. The adoption of some rules of order to conduct meetings can help keep them under control, but occasionally it is necessary to throw them out of a meeting because they persist in disorderly, rude, obstructive behavior. Showing them the door at one meeting does not prevent them from attending again, hopefully in a more thoughtful frame of mind, and it may discourage them from participation at all, but realistically, their help is that of a flat tire anyway. Disinformation agents and spies are both almost always federal employees or people in trouble with federal authorities who are more or less coerced into infiltrating groups and spreading hokum. This can be any variety of lies or scam operations, but typically involves incitement to violence, baiting to trespass, introduction of illegal goods or contraband, fraudulent fundraising schemes, immoral temptation leading to blackmail, and similar activities. One good way to provide your State Jural Assembly with a degree of defense from these provocateurs is to excuse them before every meeting begins. This is a simple announcement saying, anyone who is here under false pretenses, anyone who is working for any foreign government including the territorial United States or municipal United States, anyone who is being paid or coerced to be here, must fully disclose their presence and purpose now, or leave the premises. If they subsequently show up as federal witnesses, they are discredited for failure to disclose. Surprisingly, many G-men and women will disclose at this point. They will simply present their badges and tell why they are present, and that's that. Most times they will then leave and not come back. If they stay, it's up to you to either ask them to leave or proceed as normal, according to your own best judgment. I have always practiced a no-holds-barred look all you like transparency, which discourages these characters from getting all excited and bringing more resources and tricks to bear trying to discover activities that are perfectly lawful anyhow. That said, a State Jural Assembly is by definition a closed assembly, meant to be attended only by qualified members and known guests. Please take a look at the list of typical tricks of the disinformation agents and spies. 1. Incitement to violence. They will come in all red-hot and spewing rhetoric and stomping mad, or they will wheedle away at your outrage over the theft and injustice aspects of what has been done here. If they can't get people all riled up and violent and insurrectionist, either of those two methods, they will try the safety angle, and try to make everyone fearful and paranoid, and encourage them to do things like make contingency plans as a group, stockpile arms, and take similar actions. They will talk about getting even with attorneys and judges and politicians and similar ploys to draw people into compromising conversations in order to accuse them of threatening territorial or municipal government officials. If you simply step back from their sideshow, and observe where their diatribes and insinuations and topics all lead, it's transparent enough. They are trying to gather evidence that our state jural assemblies are 1. Not operating properly, and 2. Are fronts for rebels and insurrectionists plotting violent overthrow of the government such as it is, and or 3. Trying to get people to do or say incriminating things that can be used to accuse them of some form of terrorism. Though Americans may justly be outraged, the proper and profitable attitude is to keep calm and get even, or as my mother described it, make like a duck, all calm and unflappable on the outside, paddling like hell underneath. We all have lawful recourse in answer to their fraud schemes and abuses and have no reason to be afraid or to allow anger to overtake our better sense. They are the criminals engaged in conspiracy against the constitutions and against the lawful government of this country, not us. They are the employees caught in gross breach of trust and fraud against their employers, not us. Let them be looking over their shoulders and making contingency plans, not us. And as for our hurts and grudges, criminals seldom have much that can be attached to pay restitution or damages, but in this case, they have amassed vast quantities of credit and goods, homes and lands and pension funds, all under conditions of fraud and unjust enrichment. We don't have to resort to violence or worry too much about our recompense. All the notices have been published worldwide. The bad guys in this case have no place to escape, and the greatest danger we face is our own ignorance. So when you hear some firebrand ranting and raving and inciting violence and talking more patriot than patriot, think twice and think, a possible government agent in our chicken coop, and play your own game instead of his. Likewise, when you encounter a wheedler, constantly moaning and aggrieved about losses and blaming others and whining in an outraged fashion and encouraging in vague terms doing something about it, think, a possible government agent trying to drum up business, and again, play your own game. Ditto the fearmongers trying to make people afraid of exercising their lawful and natural rights, until they are scared and looking over their shoulders like they are guilty of something for reclaiming their own good names and joining their state jural assembly. 2. Baiting to trespass. This is one of the likely results of the incitement to violence ploys discussed above, and it is what took down Bruce Doucette and the Colorado Nine. A disinformation agent named Michael R. Hamilton, an insurance adjuster by trade, which should have raised red flags aplenty, insinuated himself and encouraged the people in Colorado to make a tragic mistake. They mistook the territorial and municipal courts and their officers for their own missing courts and public officials. As a result, they addressed these foreigners as if they were actual county and state employees guilty of malfeasance and dereliction of duty, and they transgressed into the foreign international jurisdiction of the sea and threatened these officers of the Queen and of the Pope with the punishments that would be owed to actual state instead of state officials. And that is what got them arrested and thrown into jail. Michael R. Hamilton, of course, was nowhere to be seen. He entrapped them using their own ignorance against them and baiting them to trespass. As a State Jural Assembly member, you have cut your ties to all federal entities now in operation and have no cause whatsoever to make threats or transgress into their watery jurisdiction at all. As irritating as it may be to have their continued operations in your face and to have them operating their private corporations out of your public buildings, don't take the bait. Realize that you have the means in your hands to correct this situation peaceably, by operating your land and soil jurisdiction states and counties, by educating the populace, by building up your own courts to serve the people of your state, and by exposing their lawless and predatory criminal activities to the proper authorities. Who are running these corporations on our shores? The President, the Queen, the Pope, the Lord Mayor of London, the United Nations Secretary-General, the various State of State and State of State territorial and municipal congressional delegations, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, etc. Likewise, don't take the bait when they try to scare you. Make no contingency plans, and store up no stockpiles of arms, etc., beyond what you may need for your family in some kind of emergency, earthquake, fire, flood, etc. This is the ploy they used on Sheffer Cox and his friends in Fairbanks, Alaska. The Federales introduced moles, disinformation agents, who were in trouble already on federal charges, and those men created a climate of fear so that Sheffer and others were afraid for their lives and drawn out to make contingency plans and acquire dubious amounts of firearms, etc. under the guidance and entrapment of the same men who were scaring them into these actions and secretly taping the conversations. Later, of course, this was used to make it look like Sheffer and the others accused were dangerous threats and terrorists bent on violence and unstable nutcases. They were, in fact, just innocent men being played by experts to their own downfall. Continued in For All the Jural Assemblies Part 7b. Please hit subscribe, like, share and get ready for many more Anna von Reitz videos.